Iron Man 2 features the return of director Jon Favreau and Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark and Iron Man, which by 2010 Robert Downey Jr. had pretty much become synonymous with the character of Tony Stark. At this point in Tony's career, he's come out to the world as Iron Man, which was a nice, refreshing take on the superhero genre, where heroes previously like Spider-Man and Batman had kept their identities secret, where it was just nice to get a refreshing take where a superhero was just out and open about their true identity. I know a lot of people are very divisive on Iron Man 2. It's a film that had to follow up and try to surpass the original Iron Man, which is a film that basically took everyone off guard. No one knew what hit them when the first Iron Man came out. But at the same time, it was also trying to set up the Avengers, which I think chronologically, this actually takes place around the same time as the first Thor film. As a result, this movie was pretty stuffed. There's definitely a whole bunch going on, and it can definitely feel muddled at times, as the first hour is essentially the Iron Man sequel, while the second half gets into a lot of the S.H.I.E.L.D. stuff where Nick Fury and Phil Coulson start showing up. Despite all this, I've always managed to have a pretty fun time with this film. Is it a step down from the first Iron Man? Yes, but trying to capture what the first Iron Man had and replicate it is a near impossible task. That first Iron Man film was like lightning in a bottle. The only thing you could really do is take the strengths of the original and try to make something entertaining, and I think for the most part that's accomplished here. You have the rock and roll persona of Robert Downey Jr. on full display here. I mean, I could watch this version of Tony Stark for hours on end. I think you lose a bit of what makes Tony feel more real by the time the Avengers comes around, where things become a little bit more fantastical and aliens start showing up. You really have a more realistic Tony in Iron Man 2. In this film, Tony's arc reactor is starting to infect his body and it is killing him, the very thing that was meant to be keeping him alive. And while this plot thread does get wrapped up rather conveniently, you do feel for him as he uses alcohol and partying to keep his mind off things while inadvertently pushing people away like Pepper Potts and Rhodes. I think Robert Downey Jr. is phenomenal in this film, like he's really honing the character here, as is Gwyneth Paltrow, who still looks interested here as Pepper Potts, as well as Don Cheadle, who gets a chance to take over as Rhodes from Terrence Howard from the first film, plus Don Cheadle gets to be War Machine in this film. The film's main plot does follow the plot of the first film rather similarly. This time you've got two villains who are jealous of Stark Industries and feel entitled to what Stark has, with Mickey Rourke as Ivan Vanko, or Whiplash, who does a pretty good job as a physical threat to Tony, even if he does end up being another Ironmonger. And of course there's Sam Rockwell as Justin Hammer, who owns the rival weapons manufacturing company. I think Sam Rockwell is fantastic in this film as this Weasley, slimy businessman who's purely in it for the money and fame. The two villains initially team up to create manned copies of the Iron Man suit for the military, which the military is after for most of this film. However, to the disappointment of Justin Hammer, these manned copies of the Iron Man suit end up being drones, which I always find really interesting as this was around the time that drones started being used more often in the real world. The two of them offer a fun parallel where Ivan's father, who had worked with Howard Stark, Tony Stark's father, was initially criticized of being only in it for the money, where this time around Ivan gets to work with someone who was only in it for the money, so it's dramatic irony at its best. However, one of the film's problems is trying to keep a consistent pace, as there is just so much going on. Trying to get everything included in 2 hours can come across quite muddled and crammed in all at the same time. The film can become quite challenging to try and digest as there is just so much happening on the screen. We do get the introduction of Scarlett Johansson's Black Widow in this film, where she really is a supporting character here. As we know, Joss Whedon really beefed up her character for the Avengers. This was a time obviously when Scarlett wasn't the megastar that she is now, so she doesn't get a great deal of lines or screen time in this film. And to be honest, she is used a lot for eye candy here. As the film goes on and we realize who she is, the S.H.I.E.L.D. side of things start to come more into play. And we get a few Marvel winks with Cap's shield and a call to go to New Mexico. Plus it's fun that this film was retconned to include the first official appearance of a young Peter Parker. All of this does lead the film to feeling very unfocused, as it is trying to juggle all these plot threads, and that really is the main issue of this film. I do really appreciate the film for trying to keep things more personal, where Tony is really trying hard to struggle with his demons and distancing himself from Pepper and Rhodes. But at the same time, everything around this is what really muddles the film and really convolutes Tony's journey through all of this. The movie being shot on film again only does wonders to age this film. A lot of really beautiful blacks and a lot of fantastic lighting in this film. Plus, you've got that killer AC/DC soundtrack. What more could you want? The film's set pieces do make it feel decidedly smaller than the first film, as rather than having more international conflicts, most of the conflicts happen in the States, save for the battle in Monaco, which I'll admit I actually really like the Monaco sequence as it makes it feel very James Bond-esque. The best action scene in the film is obviously the throwdown between Iron Man, War Machine, and Whiplash, and the army of drones. It's just a fantastic action scene. There are some crazy cameos from people like Stan Lee and Elon Musk of all people. Jon Favreau's Happy Hogan gets a way bigger role in this film, where in the first film he was pretty well mute for most of it. People who became much bigger later on in life, like Kate Mara and Olivia Munn, do pop up in this film as well. John Slattery as Howard Stark, Tony Stark's father, I think is wonderful in this film, especially his Walt Disney-esque appearance and Stark Industry videos. I think a special mention really needs to go out to Gary Shandling, who plays the senator who wants Tony's suit. I think he's just hilarious, especially at the beginning of the film when Tony's in Parliament, and especially at the end when he has to award Tony and Rhodes for their deeds. All in all, Iron Man 2 is definitely a step down from the first Iron Man. I think we can all agree on that. But as a fun Marvel ride, I think there's still some good to be had here. Iron Man 2 gets a 6.5 out of 10 from me. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this review of Iron Man 2. Look forward to a review of Thor as we continue to the release of Avengers Infinity War. So stay right here for your mono fix. Bye guys.